evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The White House announced today it has revoked the security clearance of former CIA Director John Brennan. It is considering doing the same to other former government officials who, like Brennan, now work as left-wing political pundits. That category would include former Director of National Intelligence Jim Clapper. It's not clear why any of these men still have legal access to classified material. The fact that they retained that power after leaving government for the private sector and punditry is bizarre, and it remained largely unknown to the public until a month ago when we broke the story on this show. Brennan no longer works for the federal government in any capacity. He holds no official post. And yet, according to two sources we spoke to exclusively today, Brennan retains perhaps the most valuable asset he had in government, a top-secret security clearance. Brennan is an out-of-the-closet extremist. This is not a man who should have a security clearance. A month later, that remains true. John Brennan remains thoroughly discredited and unbalanced. Just a few weeks ago, he accused the president of treason for daring to hold a press conference with a foreign leader. Keep in mind that treason is a death penalty offense. Responsible people do not make that charge for political reasons. But Brennan didn't hesitate.
He is, I think, the most divisive president we've ever had in the Oval Office. He is feeding and fueling hatred and animosity and misunderstandings among Americans. I use the term that this is nothing short of treasonous because it is a betrayal of the nation. He is giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
A betrayal of the nation. Would you want a person who, say, casually accused people of murder without evidence to get a security clearance? Obviously you wouldn't. Brennan is not different. In a statement released today, Brennan called the loss of his clearance an effort to suppress freedom of speech. And yet Brennan is the one who believes that words alone, speech, are a form of treason and should get you sent to prison if not executed. That is unhinged. The government is now belatedly acknowledging that. Lou Dobbs hosts Lou Dobbs Tonight, of course, on Fox Business, and he joins us tonight. Lou, what would be the reason, can you think of a legitimate reason for John Brennan to retain a security clearance after leaving government for punditry?
I can't even imagine why that would be necessary, why it would be, frankly, allowed. After his first personal attacks, not policy attacks, personal attacks against the President of the United States. And what we now suspect was a John Brennan-inspired and led assault on this president, an effort to subvert his campaign and his administration through the good offices and helpful energies of the FBI. It is, to me, unthinkable that he would be permitted to be anywhere near one of our intelligence agencies or any part of this government.
So you've covered the news for a long time. It wasn't that long ago that the left was, I think, appropriately wary of bureaucrats who worked in secret of our entire intelligence apparatus, and the idea of unelected, permanent Washington undoing a democratically elected politician would have been horrifying to them, and now they're defending it. Or am I missing something?
No, I think you are absolutely on point, and I think, by the way, you deserve immense credit for bringing this prominently to the national consciousness a month ago when you started taking up the issue of why in the world are these people who are attacking the President of the United States personally permitted security clearances? How could that even be permitted? And I think you deserve great credit for that. But in terms of the spectacle of seeing the former FBI director, the former CIA director, the National Director of Intelligence, James Clapper, absolutely in full-throated assault against this president and attacking him, as I say, personally, almost weekly, and then it became more frequent. We have never witnessed anything near that in this country's history.
I'm confused, though. If you ran one of these agencies and you had an institutional long-term interest in preserving the credibility of that agency, you'd be very upset with people like John Brennan or Jim Clapper because they detract from your legitimacy. They give rise in people's minds to questions about the deep state. They make people nervous. So why are they not telling these guys, slow it down, get off Twitter, stop being overtly political? You're doing damage to the institution, which they are.
There apparently is plenty of support within the leadership of those agencies, the holdovers, the leftovers, if you will, from the Obama administration, not to do precisely that. It is highly questionable to me why we tolerated the former intelligence agency heads becoming part of the mainstream political debate, if you can call their assault on a president personally part of the mainstream debate. But they were attacking him vigorously, viciously, unrelentingly, and it is a spectacle we have never, as I said, witnessed before, and I can't imagine that we'll ever permit again. It is, the agencies themselves have so much to answer for. If there was indeed a Russian meddling in the election, quote unquote, why in the world didn't our agencies, those three agencies in particular, know about it and do something about it to forestall it, to prevent it, or to at least carry out retribution for that under President Obama? This was on his watch, not President Trump's. And President Obama has much to answer for in leaving behind a group of intelligence agency directors who carried on the ideological assault publicly and without precedent in American history.
So, Lou, finally, Clapper and Brennan are now not government employees, but employees of television news networks. Right. You and I are also employees of television news networks.
Probably
Have you applied for a top-secret security clearance? Should I apply for a top-secret security clearance?
I personally, I think I've said this to you before, I'm going to hold out for subpoena power. I will leave it to you and others to preserve the security clearances.
Okay. I hope you get it, by the way. Lou Dobbs, thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Tucker.
If you're watching television today, you will have noted that the press is framing this question, whether or not John Brennan ought to have a top-secret security clearance, as an unprovoked assault on democracy itself. Here's a selection.
What we witnessed from the White House podium today was a brazen act of intimidation.
The way that Sarah Huckabee Sanders rolled this out was almost in a tone to be threatening to the rest of us.
Yanking their security clearance just because he doesn't like being criticized is authoritarianism in its purest form.
The president sent his White House press secretary out there today to basically poop on the people from the press secretary podium and not only threaten, like they didn't just make a threat, it was a promise.
What you just watched is a precise inversion of the traditional role of the press. Journalists ought to be skeptical of the powerful. They ought to demand accountability and clear explanations from secretive bureaucrats like John Brennan and from the agency he once worked for. But they're not. Instead, they have become Brennan's faithful handmaidens, arguing that he and his colleagues in the intelligence world are not bound by the same rules that you and I are. The intelligence establishment does what it wants, they tell us. Your job is to obey. They are in charge. You are a serf. They spy on you without limit. You accept a life with no privacy. But don't complain. Insolence is disloyalty. Dissent is treason. That is the message on every other channel. That is state media, the definition of it. Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent and the author of the new book, Spygate, The Attempted Sabotage of Donald J. Trump. Dan, thanks a lot for coming on tonight. It seems to me if the press has any role at all, it's to make certain that people who've amassed an enormous amount of power to affect your life, ought to be under relentless scrutiny. And yet what they're telling us on the other channels all day long is that it's somehow immoral for us to ask obvious questions like, why would John Brennan have a security clearance as an NBC employee? Why are they tamping down any effort to ask obvious questions about what our government is doing?
Well, you would think so, Tucker, but we're dealing with a modern-day Pravda. You understand that John Brennan was the puppet master of the entire scheme to violate the civil liberties of Donald Trump and his team? John Brennan was that guy. John Brennan, Tucker, tweeting today about his principles. I thought it was a joke. I had to check for the blue check mark. John Brennan has no principles. This is a disgraceful human being who nearly destroyed the reputation of the intelligence community. Tucker, on August 25th of 2016, John Brennan himself, this is a fact, it's public record, went and briefed Harry Reid up on the Hill about elements in the dossier that then made it into a letter from Harry Reid to the FBI that was used as a predicate to spy on the Trump team. And we're supposed to trust this guy? This guy should get off Twitter and hire a lawyer.
Well, but I also thought we were supposed to be impressed by him. I mean, I don't call me naive, but I grew up imagining the heads of our intel agencies were sophisticated and intelligent. Everything I have ever read by John Brennan is banal. It's a cliche, it's pompous, it's stupid. He doesn't seem like an impressive person. How did he wind up running the most powerful intel agency in the world? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, because when I worked in the White House, I remember crossing paths with Brennan and found him to be a narcissistic fool, just like he is now. This man is really a disgrace and a stain on the United States, whose legacy will only be as a cautionary tale told to future CIA leaders about how not to act. Tucker, keep in mind, too, back as far back as 2015, left-wing reporters, because they thought they had a Trump collusion conspiracy, which never existed, were reporting on Brennan's contacts with foreign intel about Trump and his relationship with the Russians that never came to fruition. Suspiciously, some of those foreign intelligence heads resigned right after the Donald Trump election, rather abruptly. They were communicating with John Brennan, who, by the way, also is on the record saying on TV with Chuck Todd and others and in media appearances that he still has no hard evidence of collusion, yet he weaponized the government in order to attack Donald Trump. He needs to slither away quickly.
How's the next president going to deal with this? I mean, now that, the veil has been removed and we have some sense of what's going on beneath, will any president ever trust any intel agency ever again not to undermine him?
Tucker, I'm not sure about that. And that's really what upsets me, having served under two Democratic presidents as a Secret Service agent. And listen, I'm a sinner like everyone else. I'm not looking for your pat on the back or anyone in your audience. The taxpayers paid me well to do it. I never once thought, even in my own books, about taking a personal shot at Barack Obama using my experiences. Never. You just don't do that. When you sign up for public service, no less run the CIA, and then you turn around and turn to Twitter to attack the sitting president? No, he's a stain on the country. We deserve better than this.
I think that's right. Dan, thank you very much for that.
Yes, sir.
Paul Manafort has spent the last weeks in a hole in prison, solitary confinement.